and I am Mystic Madison. We have a beloved guest today who has been on the show. This is you've been on the show the most. This is your fourth time.
Wow.
Richard, go ahead.
Richard Kahn of Golden Sun Astrology.
I thought you go by Richard Simon Kahn.
Richard Simon Kahn.
That's how you were
true.
before. We don't want to confuse our guest. They'll be like, wait,
Richard Simon
there was a different one.
I won't give the story behind that. But yes, Richard Simon Kahn of Golden Sun Astrology, which you can find at goldensun-astrology.com.
I like your shirt, Richard. That's a very cosmic, almost like a eclipsey.
Exactly.
And that's the thing, guys. We are here to talk about the solar eclipse. Thank you so much for joining us again.
My pleasure.
And do you want to tell us about your shirt, or should we get into like what we're, I guess, here to discuss?
Well, I think eclipse fever is sweeping the country, right? This is a really significant eclipse because it's the first time in 99 years, actually, since a total eclipse has gone across the entire United States. The last time was in 1918.
What was the one in 1979?
Yeah, they're talking about that was a total eclipse, but it was only part of the country that saw it. It went like over a few states.
Yeah.
But it wasn't covering the country.
Yeah.
Whereas this eclipse
is from coast to coast.
It's from coast to coast, and it's very interesting in terms of, there's a lot of different levels to this. There is the scientific level of understanding what the eclipse represents, which I'd like to explain to everybody. And then from there is the symbology of it, because everything is telling a story. And there is a lot of energy connected with solar eclipses. They have a long history.
I definitely want to tell the audience, though, about our surprises today, because when you came on the show last time, we did a comparison. Richard is an astrologer, and he looks at charts. You did my solar return. I'm going to have you do my next solar return, which is like 4 months away. I'm already thinking about it. But Richard, as an astrologer, was able to look into the chart of Hillary Clinton and compare her chart with what was going on the inauguration day with Donald Trump. And we did that. And he's here today to talk about the eclipse and what kind of effect, if any, it has on our nation, and it has on the political arena. We are in a very intense time. I wore you didn't even say anything. I have my peace necklace. Yes. I'm wearing a peace necklace, and look at this. Look at what I just got at my local Whole Foods. It is kombucha, which is a great brand. I love this brand. It's really good, but this is the Liberty brand. It's seasonal. I think they did it because of what's been happening. They call it seasonal, but it's really like the season of tapping into what liberty means and what values are.
Well, and maybe because of summer, it's the 4th of July. We celebrate the Independence Day, which is the birth of America. Well, but it's summer. They make it for summer.
I thought it was for the marches, but maybe for Charlotte. It's the Liberty Charlottesville kombucha tea, and I don't know if you care to try it. I'll probably be trying it. I wish I could give it to all of you, because we all need a little bit of liberty right now.
That's right.
We all need to remember where we came from in the highest regards, and what we stand for as a melting pot of a nation. So,
and I look forward to hopefully sharing some very interesting and different points of view of what's going on with the United States birth chart in relation to the eclipse and just the planets in general, because this is a power-packed time. There's a lot going on.
I want to go back. I know this show is not about the inauguration, but those of you who happen to have caught it, or you can still check it because it's archived, that show was an interesting show that we did, because it actually showed that Hillary was the winner based on the aspects, based on her luck in her chart, based on the public adoration. I think showed that she was definitely ahead of Trump. And then we were just
probably about also 85% of the astrologers who were making predictions related to the election said that it looked in favor of Hillary. based
Yeah.
on the astrology. So there was a lot going towards that. And yet, obviously, that isn't the way it played out. And
Yeah.
so there's lots of things going on.
But I remember, and I could go back and even see it in the show, that you had said, well, it looks like Hillary's going to win. It looks like she's the one who really, her chart is boosted up. But you had also said, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, but it looks like Trump isn't going to win, but it's going to be followed by months, because you saw something in his chart where there were months of conflict and months of
Controversy.
of controversy around the election. And you said it was going to go on, and that certainly came to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, so I'm going to drink to liberty right now with my kombucha. And yeah, maybe we could take some time, because there probably is a lot of misinformation about what the eclipse is. My son even said, why can't I look at the eclipse, or why can't I look in the sky? And those are all interesting things to talk about.
Good.
People don't know.
That's a good place to start, because yes, there is the sheer impact, the physical impact of what happens during an eclipse. And of course, this is when people live in an area where there is this total eclipse, it's a phenomenal sight. It's certainly unusual, and going back in time, like a couple of centuries even, or farther, with all the traditional societies and religions and cultures, an eclipse wasn't understood what was happening. And so it was like the world is ending, or is the world ending? It was terrifying for a lot of people, but also fascinating, because there goes the sun. And so you want to look at it. That's the natural impulse, is to see what's happening, what's going on.
Yes.
And that same interest is happening right now. I mean, there are thousands of people who are going specifically to be in the path of the eclipse. Only now, at least, there's more understanding of, okay, you've got to have protective glasses, because back 100 years ago or more, people didn't fully understand what was happening, and realize that even though the sun is being covered by the moon, which is what the eclipse is, the energy coming around the corona of the sun is still emitting all of this electromagnetic energy and the ultraviolet energy, and that actually can burn the retinas in our eyes.
Right.
There are no nerves in the retina. There are no nerves in the eye, and so a person doesn't even know that they
wouldn't feel it.
They wouldn't feel it, and so it's just that the after effect is their vision is suddenly not so clear, or may go away completely. So this was the in physical terms, this was the real danger that was connected with eclipses, and I think is one of the reasons that it got woven into the cultural stories and myths related to eclipses, because there's a lot of fear surrounding eclipses. If you go back historically, they're said to portend disasters, the deaths of kings, they're ill omens, all of this stuff that both in Eastern and Western cultures have tended to view eclipses with a very negative slant, and to basically say, watch out, don't get out in this, don't look at this, don't be out in it, avoid it if you can. And I think some of that got woven in just to protect people, but it became an element of fear, because and as a result, I think it has gotten used by different people in religious authority or political authority to kind of manipulate people. This is what those in authority do. They want control, and so there's an element there. And I think eclipses have been used in this way. And I have some excerpts from different astrologers, particularly in the Hindu and Vedic tradition, which goes back thousands of years, and they say stay away from this. That they take a very negative view towards the influence of eclipses.
That's interesting, because now today, maybe it's because it's around the full moon. I don't know, but and it is the full moon, right? That
It's the new moon.
The new moon, right?
It's actually the moon and the sun are lining up.
Okay, so it's the new moon. But now that we have like that, there's a lot of things, like you can see a lot of websites that are talking about how a eclipse is a new start. It's a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have something for you guys because I went through every single astrological sign and it talks about what the eclipse means for you, whether you're an Aries or a Libra or a Capricorn.
Cool.
So we will do that as well. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like that idea, or don't, but do it anyway. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's interesting because obviously people didn't know what was going on. And can you imagine, like, if you have a full-on eclipse during the day, I mean, it would become pitch black.
Just
and
about.
People would definitely think that maybe something had gone awry, and what if the sun doesn't come back? I mean, I'm sure people got scared.
And we have to we're used to our culture and the knowledge that we have of the solar system and our place on Earth, and so we have a fair amount of scientific knowledge that didn't exist a couple of hundred years ago.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, 400 years ago, the brightest minds of the ages were saying the world was flat, that the Earth was flat in the Western world.
Yeah.
And so our understanding of where we are in space is much, much different than it was even a couple of hundred years ago. But people back in that time, they regarded the sun, first of all, they thought the Earth was the center of the universe, most cultures. And then we're used to the global idea of traveling and moving around. And back in more ancient times, people, if they traveled 25 or 30 miles or 50 miles, that was huge. That was a big journey for them. Most people really didn't leave their local area very much.
That's crazy.
If an eclipse occurred, that was their world. That was how they defined their world. The frame around their world was maybe 50 miles. That was most of the world. And so if an eclipse occurred, if they were in the path of a total eclipse, this was like the end of the world. And so people panicked, and the natural impulse would be to pray to the gods, to pray that, that please don't end us here. What is this? And so there's a lot of things that evolved out of that. But and right now there's still a lot of talk, and I'd like to show what actually happens. There's still a lot of talk that I think there's way too much hype connected with eclipses, actually. I mean, I got into this as this great American eclipse became more prominent in people's consciousness. I got into it to see, okay, what does an eclipse actually represent? How much influence does it have on our personal experience? How much influence does it have when it's falling across our country? And what is it really about? And so I've come to a couple of radical conclusions. And one is...
So are they going to be like predictive conclusions, or are you just doing...
We'll get to that.
Okay.
First, I just want to deal with the facts.
Yeah, all right.
And so to start
the other could be facts. They just haven't happened yet.
Well, they could, but they're speculations.
There's for now,
they're speculations. So I'd like to start by just showing that here is what an eclipse basically consists of, is that the moon comes into the exact alignment between the sun and the earth, and it creates a shadow on the earth. And that is what the path of the eclipse is. And so I hope all of you can see that.
And by the way, I should let them know that Richard is actually teaching a class. You're teaching a class in this tomorrow.
Yes.
So we're lucky us that we get all of your we get your tools for your lesson plan.
Yes.
So it's very well managed, so people will be able to.
Well,
it's like
it's all coming
free class.
Together.
Yeah.
So this is the basic dynamic of what's going on with it when there's an eclipse. It's very interesting to realize that the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. This is not to scale. So the moon is actually 400 times smaller than the sun, but because of its distance from the sun, when it lines up with the sun, it covers it.
Right.
You know, and I mean, okay, this
Yes.
just shows you how incredible the structure of our
Yes.
solar system and life on this planet
I mean,
is.
amazing. And also, like, if we lived on Venus and Mercury, we would never see an eclipse because they don't have moons.
That's right.
Right?
That's
they don't
right.
have moons. So we're lucky we have a moon. We get to see this. I think if you were in Jupiter, they have moons, but you can't stand on Jupiter.
Right.
So we'd have to like float while we looked at the eclipse. Like we'd have to be in a spacecraft.
So this is one thing that's important to understand, that the moon is just tiny in comparison to the sun. And then the other thing that I want to bring out is that the path of the eclipse, actually, you know, people talk about the eclipses and they talk about this is happening, and the way that it's talked about is like this affects the entire Earth. And the fact is, it really is only affecting a tiny portion of the Earth, where the direct total eclipse is only 67 miles wide along that path.
Right.
And then the partial eclipse is
a little bit
in total,
bigger.
It's about 700 miles
but it
wide.
still doesn't cover the entire United States.
And I found a picture. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I found a picture that also illustrates this more accurately.
Yes.
And so this shows you.
That's a cool picture.
It is.
I'd frame that.
That was from NASA.
Oh, wow.
One of their illustrations. And this shows you how the shadow, the direct path of the shadow of the eclipse, you can see is very tiny. In the Earth is 13,000 miles in diameter. The path of the total eclipse is 67 miles in diameter. So it's a tiny, tiny section of the Earth that actually experiences a total eclipse. And then that softer circle or softer shadow that they call the penumbra, that may cover 700 to 800 miles, but it still is just a little bit more than half the surface of the Earth. And it's just for the other thing is that the eclipse only lasts at the maximum 4 minutes.
Yeah.
And so
I think this one is like 2 minutes and 30 something seconds.
Well, it depends where it is. It depends on the location and all that. But the maximum is like 4 minutes. So the amount of time that this is taking place and the area that it's covered is actually very, very small. And so I think there's a lot of hype, and some of this relates back to, I think, our past life experiences, and also maybe to just our within our collective psyche. We as human beings have experienced eclipses, and we have experienced them from a very different state of consciousness, and this fear that the sun was being extinguished.
You know, it's funny because I saw something, it was actually on Facebook, but somebody had pulled up some clips from the 1979 eclipse. So the Walter Cronkite,
Yeah.
he was like the big news anchor at the time, and he did this whole thing where he showed different parts of the country and what they were doing for the eclipse, because that was the last one that was comparable to this one. And you saw that there were all these people in the late 70s that had built like a fake Stonehenge.
Oh, wow.
Stonehenge, and they had eradicated like all these instruments, and they were dressed like druids, and you saw their kids there. But yeah, and then they were praying to the deities and the gods, and they had little statues out. So they were probably reenacting what people really did.
That's right.
That's
right. So that was there, and that was that has been part of our collective human experience, is that worshiping the sun or feeling that the sun is the source of life. And if that is going out in the middle of the day, oh my God, what is happening?
Yeah.
You know, we're in trouble. We need to do something. And this is maybe why in some cultures they started doing sun sacrifices, and they had human sacrifices to keep bring
keep
back
the sun from having another eclipse.
That's right. That's right. To make sure that the sun would stay, would
I could see
sustain
that.
them.
So I have a question. So we are getting this eclipse, but I didn't even think of this. This is not going to happen in Europe, because by the time the sun, by the time we orbit around, we'll no longer have that intersection.
Alignment won't be there.
Yeah,
the sun will not be exactly aligned. And there are solar eclipses every year, by the way. That's another thing, that this one is being hyped because it is going across the entire United States. But the fact is, every year, because of the motion of the Earth and the Moon around the Earth, every year there are solar eclipses.
Okay.
Usually in August or September.
Wow.
Yes.
So some island person who is not in touch with the internet might be really nervous.
Yeah. All the time it's crossing different parts of the globe.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, it would make sense because everything's in constant motion. So there's that orbit. So so now that we've moved on to a more positive time, and people are into doing like new moon rituals, full moon rituals, summer solstice rituals, is there a ritual that people can do for the eclipse? There
is, but I'd like to share a little bit too of some of the traditional viewpoints, because there are recommendations that, again, just to give an idea of some of these, like from the Hindu tradition, that here is a Vedic astrologer and what they call a Vastu master, which means he's like a feng shui master of feeling the energies and aligning things in your environment. And he said that in his opinion, the Vedic Shastras, or ancient texts, recommend that it's better to fast, meditate, practice Vedic chanting, and stay indoors during an eclipse. And this is I've read a number of different things from Indian astrologers who represent this tradition of understanding, and they all more or less say the same thing. And so he talks about that when this alignment is happening between the sun and the earth and the moon, that he said that this is in effect that the malefic influences of the moon, because this is considered very negative, this pole of the moon blocking the sun. So they say this is like the moon swallowing the sun, and it's not an event to be celebrated. In ancient times, this total solar eclipse was said to have brought about the death of kings, emperors, and royal persons. So there's this very strong negative. It sounds
for a very foreboding ritual.
Well, and you could imagine that in ancient times, the kings usually had their court astrologer to advise them about different timing for different things and what to do. And I think that goes on to a greater degree than most people are aware of today. But among the Illuminati and those who are actually controlling things in what we consider the modern world, that they do use astrological timing. That if you start looking at the way some things happen and the way different different decisions are presented, or different policies are enacted, they almost always have an astrological timing to them. And so this is what astrology was used for. So again, you go back to former times, a few hundred years back or more, and a king's kingdom was maybe a couple of 100 miles, and so if a total eclipse was happening, this was a major event.
Right, and they didn't travel much past their kingdom.
They didn't travel,
that was it.
And so it was a major event. It was a crisis, and they had to they had to be able to respond to that. And if there was unrest or whatever, then that was a time that people probably would freak out, and yes, it would mean death to the king. Okay. If that was happening. So there's that. So he concludes with that it's recommended, based on these ancient Indian scriptures, not to engage or initiate projects during
That's
solar
the
eclipse.
exact opposite of what it says on all these sites, that it's actually a new personal beginning.
Well, that's why I wanted to highlight all this,
Okay.
because
All right.
this is what's
Good.
interesting, is that
Because
there's this dichotomy, there's this
yeah.
controversy going on about what are the eclipses, because many of today's contemporary astrologers and particularly among energy workers and psychics, they're seeing what the energy is presenting and what the opportunities are there and what this represents. And when the sun is being blocked, this is like, the comparison I would give is, it's like rebooting your modem.
Okay.
Like, so, you know,
That
your
sounds
modem,
better than
your
what
modem
the other
has
thing
this
said.
continuous flow of energy going through it, and it sometimes it overheats. And as we all know, you just have to unplug it and give it a couple of minutes to cool off.
Right.
You know?
That would make sense, because the sun is a big source of sustenance, just like any power cord or any appliance with power attached to it. And that's true. It's when things get too mixed up, or they start to short circuit, which is kind of what's happening now anyway.
They do.
Then maybe rebooting it will work. I hope so.
Right. And so there are things going on in the universe that you know, we may attribute to physical things, but there's also there's consciousness in the design of life and our solar system, what we experience. And this type of rebooting, now the sun is emanating billions of megawatts of energy every minute, every second, even on us. So when that energy is momentarily blocked, what it's doing is it's creating this cool off period that then can be seen as an opportunity for resetting yourself, for putting new
So maybe it's just a really good idea to like meditate.
It is.
Just
I still say
stop
it
what
is.
you're doing during that 2 minutes and 36
or 4
seconds.
minutes or whatever, 5 minutes.
Yeah, set your alarm and just tune out.
Yeah, because there is some shift going on in the energy, depending on how close you are to the center, but there is a shift in the energy. And so to take advantage of that in a conscious way, what a number of the energy workers that I've read about and talked to are saying, to use this first to release stuff that no longer serves you, and then to really focus on things that you want to create, what you want to create in your life, or what you want to change in your own consciousness. And it's an opportunity for that to be given kind of an energetic boost, that when the sun comes back, as that energy comes back in, if you're consciously focused on creating something, you're going to get that energy coming back and reinforcing that for you.
And how can people find out the exact time? That I guess they can just Google it
based
on their location and their area code.
Yeah, there's maps that show exactly when the eclipse is happening. And
do we know what time it's happening in Los Angeles?
Yeah, for Los Angeles, the time, first of all, the eclipse in Los Angeles area, Southern California, is going to be a partial eclipse. That about 60% of the sun will be eclipsed, and the maximum time that eclipsing will take place will be from 4:21 in the morning. I'm sorry, 10:21. 10:21 in the morning on Monday morning, August 21st. Mercury's in retrograde. All the
exactly.
Okay, Monday morning, August 21st, 10:21 a.m. to 10:44 a.m. So it's actually about 20 minutes
because of the 60% rather than the full.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. So
that makes sense.
So during that time period, that's a really good time if you're able to stop and do a little meditation and just be conscious and focus your energy. And also, I have a little suggestion.
Oh, okay. I have a question for you that just popped in.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I don't want to derail you. After you ask that, I have a really good question. Okay. I'll hold it.
Okay, hold your question.
Okay.
So for the workshop I'm doing tomorrow, I just was inspired to create a little affirmation to practice as part of a meditation, and doing this during the height of the eclipse. And
yay!
So it goes like this: I gratefully release that which no longer serves me. and I joyously open myself to living with greater love, greater kindness, greater compassion. I gratefully release the fears and worries that try to bind me or blind me. I am the immortal soul. I commit to being a force for good in this world. And this affirmation ties in with the sun and the moon in Leo. It's about the heart. It's about expanding our hearts. It's about bringing out the nobility that's within us. It's about believing in the fire that burns within us in terms of our own inspiration, in terms of our own self-knowledge and self-awareness.
I love that. I think that's a great affirmation, especially, and I hate to keep saying, you know, what's happening right now and what people are going through right now, but it's very apropos.
It is, because this is the time we're living in. This is part of why this energy is happening, and it's very significant that it's happening in the sign Leo, because it's encouraging us to bring out the best of those Leo qualities.
And Leo is a very optimistic sign too, so perhaps it's encouraging us to be more optimistic. And Leo is a very protective sign. They, you know, the lion protects his jungle, so we're hoping that if a president has a Leo rising, he'll protect the
Okay, well, that's another story.
But here's my question. Here is my question. So, because this eclipse happens to be in Mercury retrograde, does that change anything, or does that make it more intense, or does that have any meaning at all?
I think it does, in that the one of the things that they say about in talking about the eclipses and the energy workers and the contemporary astrologers is that the eclipse is like a burst of energy. It's taking place at a certain point in time, but that burst resonates, that it carries it forward for a number of weeks or even months.
Yeah.
And so that's why focusing on that at that time, that it can give you this energetic boost. It can allow you to reboot and to reset some things in your life, because moving forward, it has an effect. And I think particularly that effect is going to become more noticeable after Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde, there's actually 5 planets right now that are in retrograde. And so what that means is that the energies that are connected with a lot of our impulse to evolve and to grow are turning us within. We're looking more deeply at what's going on within us, and what do the events that happen outside mean to us personally, and in terms of our collective growth and being, what's going on. And so there's a more of an inner focus while the planets are in retrograde. And so when Mercury goes direct on September 5th, that's when Mercury will go direct, I think that's going to start a shift. Mercury rules the mind. It rules the rational mind, our communication, intellectual
technology,
processing. And so we're going to think more. We're going to be thinking more and looking at things in a slightly different way. And I think that there's going to be some energy that kicks in there, because Mercury is going to go back over, and I could show you on some charts if you want to look at that. Mercury is going to go back over the same planetary or zodiac territory that it's covering right now when the eclipse occurs. So the eclipse is actually happening. Let's see. The eclipse is actually happening. Mercury is at 8 degrees Virgo when the eclipse happens on Monday. And so Mercury is going to continue in retrograde, and it's going to go all the way back to 29 degrees Leo before it goes direct again,
right.
Which is very interesting, because that is also the degree of the eclipse. This is also right on the same degree, that the 1 degree off from where the eclipse is happening. So there's a lot of... So
maybe something will be coming full circle at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a cycle. There's some kind of a cycle going on here, that energetically there's a loop that's being created. And I think when Mercury reaches back to 8 degrees Virgo again, which is where it is at the day of the eclipse, there's going to be some significant things that'll be revealed for each of us that we'll have some insights about
Right.
things, and that there'll be some shifts because it's lining up and
It's
resonating with this
closing. It's
energy.
closing that loop. So, and Virgo is a very healing sign, or it can be. I mean, it can really cut the fat. It can really get rid of things that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
So maybe that's an organizational. Things are going to be organized a little differently.
And also, it's Virgo is associated with analysis, with
Yes,
self-reflection,
the therapist.
and so
yes.
you're thinking more. You're really looking at things and doing more introspection to see, okay, what is really going on here? What is this really all about? And especially once Mercury starts going direct, then the mind really wants to track things and keep up with it. Right now, it's kind of like we're sort of like, all right, okay, let's just cruise here. Let's just see what happens. And we're flowing with it. But when it goes direct, we're going to want to focus our mental energies and have them
really hone in.
Yeah.
So Richard, just to go back to that, to the lovely thing that you read for people to meditate on during the eclipse, if they can, is there a place where they can find that online? And also, I mean, they can always just go back. You guys can go back and you can replay that and you can get it that way. But what should people do when they do something for intention? Should they light a candle? Should they, I mean, is there something, if they have the wherewithal to do it, they're in a good place to do it, is there something to increase or elevate the power of those words?
Well, there's a couple of things, and again, I've got some excerpts from this energy workers that I really respect, called the Power Path School of Shamanism. And these folks are very tuned in.
The Power Path School of Shamanism.
Yes.
That's quite a name. It's a good name.
Yes. And so one of the things, this is what their recommendation was for how to tune in with this energy of the eclipse and use it in a productive way. So two things. One is to proceed doing an affirmation like this, or creating your own by having a little meditation during the height of the eclipse. And you can accompany that by in advance creating a sheet of paper that you write down the things that you want to let go of, that you're ready to release, and also a couple of the things that you want to bring into manifestation. And then if you have a little bowl there or something, to burn that after you've meditated, to burn that and allow that to be part of the energy of
But
the
you would
eclipse.
be burning the things you want to release and not and keeping the things that you want to bring into manifestation, right? Is that what they're recommending?
They said
burn
both.
it all.
Because you're
You're
allowing
releasing
it to go into the ether.
I see.
That you're,
interesting.
It's just in the moment, you're acknowledging that and then releasing it to bring fulfillment of both the releasing and the bringing it to manifestation. And then the other thing that the Power Path people say is acknowledge during the eclipse itself to acknowledge the absence of the sun and the solar energy as it's eclipsed from the earth, to try to feel this. And for those few moments, feel the eclipse energy releasing old patterns and beliefs that have been part of your life, maybe for years. But
or maybe really, since childhood. I love the idea that it's to think of it as a reboot or a reset, a recalibration. I mean, those are great ways to look at going into something with positive energy and actually with intention.
Yes, exactly. And I think it reflects a little bit more enlightened approach to living, because it's recognizing it. Okay, there are these cosmic things going on around us, and these are not just random happenings in the universe. That they are there, and they may actually have an evolutionary purpose for us. And so, the more consciously we could tune in and use them, hello, why are we here? That's the idea.
That's great, to live life awake.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the big shifts from this old school way of looking at the eclipse, and laying all these negatives on it, behind which I think were basically
they were based on logistics and just how people couldn't get away.
Well, and to protect people really from damaging their eyes, number one, and that's a huge thing. And so, sure, you lay on all these directives and these fears of in relation to the eclipse. And so then people will not go out and look at the eclipse. It makes sense. That's the way things worked in the previous millenniums. But we're in an evolving time on the planet, believe it or not. We are in an evolving time, and all of this is the residue. This is what we're seeing in society is the stuff, the structures that have been built up over the course of several thousand years and that are now being dismantled. And that's...
You know what I just had a thought about, Richard, was that people, when the birth of the smartphone came along, 2008, 2009, 2007, people were very eye-centric, egocentric, narcissistic. Everything came about taking selfies, and taking selfies of selfies. And now it seems like that has been internalized. So people are less interested in doing that and more interested in taking videos of what's occurring around them or what's happening in the world and logging and documenting the changes that they're seeing. So when you talk about we are evolving, even if it seems like we're not, I mean, you can see society has changed its rhythm, even in that regard. And
a lot of the uses are to help bring out more of the heart quality, to bring out more of the awareness of what's going on the planet, of the suffering that people are enduring, of the damage that's being done to nature, because that is part of we're connected to that, whether we're conscious of it or not. We are connected, and so this is part of the reawakening of the divine feminine in society and within us collectively. And so you're right. That's one of the ways in which this is being manifested. And so we are in an evolutionary change, in an evolutionary cycle that's going to.
Well, even 10 years ago, I mean, there's been a big shift in everyone and a shift in how people are living.
Yeah.
So,
So let's see. So to wrap up this thing about during this eclipse.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so you start by feeling the energy of the eclipse and feel the energy of the sun being eclipsed, and then feel yourself releasing. Allow yourself to release stuff that you want to let go of, that you've been carrying with you, and especially beliefs that you may have, and let all of that go. And then as the eclipse recedes and the sun comes back, imagine that it is feeding and energizing and nourishing a new you. That this is that you have, like a snake shedding its skin, you have let some of this go. You've let some of yourself go and be dissolved in the eclipsing of the sun. You fed that into the universe, into the ether, and now you're bringing a new you into manifestation.
Or even like a plant, that has kind of withered without the sun and is now coming back to life in a stronger sense.
So, and this new you has been reset to a new vibration, a new consciousness, a new frequency. Being thinking of yourself that way, and that's where the empowerment comes in, and that's why at the end I concluded this affirmation with the idea: I am the immortal soul. That it's seeing ourselves, reminding ourselves that we are divine beings who are having a human experience. And that power, that consciousness is who we really are. And then behind all of this that we experience on the human level, that we commit to being a force for good in the world. And that's what each of us are here for.
Yeah, and if your brain gets wired to stay attuned to that, you'll manifest it. Or you'll help to manifest it, or you'll move towards manifesting it, which is, I think, so amazing that the brain can accept these facts and actually start carrying things out.
Yeah. Now our time is starting to run out, so
Do you have more?
Yes. And so
We have a lot more. Okay, because I also have to do my little thing. So
do you want to do your thing first?
Yeah, maybe,
Okay.
because I want to make sure that so this is the eclipse through the signs. So no matter what sign you are, I made a little cheat sheet so that every person, no matter what sign they are, can figure out how the eclipse is going to affect them. So I'll move through it kind of quickly. So people that are Aries, you are going to be full of creative expression. There's growth and success. And it's interesting what you said, because you said the ripples of the eclipse are going to even go for a few months or a few days. They're saying that Aries people will have growth and success expanding out into February of 2018. So that's a long wave for Taurus. They say that you're supposed to focus on matters close to home. So that would be family and home life. And you can make the eclipse about that, because that's the area that's going to be lit up. For Gemini, it's a chance to resolve relationship stuff with better self-expression, because it hits Gemini's third house, I guess. With Cancer, those of you who are born end of June and July, it's better career perspectives because it's happening in your second house. With Leo, it's all about kicking bad habits. Maybe that's the Virgo influence. But you may feel a little out of control with the Mercury retrograde. I can't talk. For Virgo, and I know you're a Virgo, it said when I did the research that it's a rocky time with Mercury retrograde. And it's going to be a time for introspection and contemplation, as you just previously mentioned. They said to slow down, and exactly what you said, after September 5th, all that will lift and it will be full steam ahead. Libras are great collaborators, and it's a big time to collaborate, what Libras do best. Scorpio, bring out the issues just below the surface. Again, that might be with the Virgo influence, because Virgo kind of churns everything, and Scorpios are going to be very good at elevating things to the surface. Sagittarius, that's me. I love this. So this is why I had to do it, because it sounded so fun. It says that I'm going to have, or Sagittarius says, we are going to have our own personal new year. So I was ready to light some fireworks for the eclipse. It says that it brings desire to help expand and grow. Coming weeks and months, energy levels smooth out, and it balances between responsibility and pleasure. So hopefully we can work on having more balance in our lives between what we need to do and obligations, and having that work-life balance. Capricorns, the people born around Christmas and beyond into the third week of January, the eclipse occurs in your 8th house. So there will be issues of joint financial issues and loans that will come under fire or focus, depending on how it plays out. Aquarius, it hits the 7th house. That is a relationship house. So relationship issues will be reinvigorated. You'll be able to figure out where relationships are going and what it is that you want to come into focus in that arena.
And also very important for Aquarians, are very strongly affected by this eclipse, because Aquarius is the sign opposite Leo. Yes. And so they're connected by the energetic polarity of where the sun and moon are. So the sun and the moon are in Leo, 29 degrees Leo. The north node of the moon is also at 24 degrees Leo. And the south node of the moon is in Aquarius. And so there's a very strong direct relationship here when that energy is focused in Leo. And so Aquarians
it
really
will
catch
be the other side of the coin of whatever Leo's going through. So, and then last but not least, we have our lovely Pisces people who need to work through, according to the eclipse, daily routines and organization coming into focus under the coming months. So each sign gets its own little project. I like that every single sign gets to focus on something different.
Really good.
Yeah.
Those were really good.
Especially mine, my own personal New Year. I mean, who wouldn't love to have my own I should have a party Monday night, right? Like a New Year's party?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is a big party. So a couple of things before the clock runs out here, that this eclipse eclipse is very symbolic because it's going across the entire United States. It's literally dividing the country in half, which is very symbolic. We're living in a time of great polarity, and it's going through the heart of the country. It's actually and it cuts through Missouri, which is
that like the smack center point?
It's just about the center of the country. Missouri has also been just recently a news item was listing that Missouri is legally qualifies as the most racist state in the country because their laws are so much slanted in favor of white people and against people of color. And that,
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I've never been to Missouri.
Well,
wow.
You don't want to.
Interesting.
But anyway, that's very interesting symbolically because the United States, one of the things, there's a lot going on with the United States. I want to show you the chart in a minute, but the United States is undergoing a huge transformation here because of the influence of Pluto coming back to its natal position in the United States birth chart. And that is
for those
here.
For those of you that can't read charts, that basically is showing the sky on that day.
Yes, but Pluto is moving. The eclipse is an important and significant event, and it's getting our attention and focusing people on more awareness of things. But actually, if you talk about the changes that are going on in the country and what we need to be concerned about, the influence of Pluto is like hundreds of times more powerful than the eclipse. But it just moves slowly. We don't see it until it suddenly reaches a tipping point, and then some huge change takes place, and then we realize, wow, this is amazing that this is happening. And so Pluto is actually a much deeper influence than this eclipse. But still, this eclipse it's like the handwriting on the wall. This is like a message from the universe to all Americans to say, do you know what's going on? Do you know what's going on in the country right now? Do you understand this? What does this mean for you? So symbolically, it's going through the heart of the country. It's in the sign Leo, which Leo rules the heart. And Leo is also the sign of the kings, or the sign of the rulers. It's the sign of royalty. And then coincidentally, it also happens to be going right on the rising sign of the current person who's calling himself the president of the United States. It goes through Trump's ascendant at 29 degrees, Leo. And so it's also pointing to him and indicating that there is a big shift that's going to be taking place for him. And I think that we can see, just in relation to the circumstances that have been going on the last couple of weeks, that his approval ratings with his quote base are just tanking, and this whole thing with the violence in Charlottesville last week, and Trump's position of his ambivalent position of whether it's okay for Nazis and other hate groups to express themselves and to
as long as they have a permit.
This violence. Yeah, as long as they have a permit.
They keep their guns by their side.
And he's more concerned about, well, is he going to lose them as his base, as opposed to what's the right thing? Is this should a president be endorsing these kind of people? And so his perspective on things seems to be getting more and more murky, and it's like he's getting buried in his manipulation, his lack of really having real policy, that he's just out to take advantage of whatever can be done in the moment. And I think that this eclipse is in fact signaling the beginning of the end for him in his role as the president. And how long that may take, it may be a matter of months, or it may go until the beginning of next year. But
the research that I did showed that people are going to have the ramifications until February 2018. So maybe this eclipse stretches out over
Yeah.
that time.
Well, and there's a couple of things that are really interesting in his chart, since we're talking about
We're going to look at Trump's chart.
In the last 2 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
That in Trump's chart, this is his chart real quickly. You might be able to get a screen grab of that. But one of the things that's really significant is that he has Saturn, the planet Saturn, transiting Saturn, which tends to bring the weight of responsibilities. It asks us what we're really doing. Are we taking care of business? He's got Saturn, first of all, 21 degrees Sagittarius is where transiting Saturn is exactly conjuncting his moon at 21 degrees Sagittarius in his fourth house. And so one of the things that this represents is that the responsibilities that he took on being the president, figuring that, hey, he's the Donald, and if he could run his businesses and get away with it, he could run the presidency and get away with it. And I think he's finding out that the responsibilities are a lot more than
they're not. It's not as fun. I think he thought it was going to be fun.
Yeah, and Saturn is not fun.
Saturn has to do with being king.
Yeah.
And I think he thought it was going to be fun.
Yeah. So Saturn coming and setting and resting right on his moon, where his moon are his feelings and how comfortable he is. He's really feeling the pressure that this is no longer fun for him, and that's a big cue. And then also the Saturn is also making an exact opposition to his natal sun at 22 degrees Gemini. So this further shows that he's either going to buckle down and really start taking the job seriously, or he's going to be looking for an exit. And that's what his biographer says, is that he's going to resign in order to save his own ego in this case, to save face, that he'll resign and blame it all on the Democrats or the Congress or whatever, and say that he did the best he could, but people wouldn't cooperate with him. But anyway, he's really feeling the pressure. And then with the eclipse happening on his ascendant, the ascendant is where he appears in public. It's his public face, his public persona, and the eclipse is kind of like saying, okay, we're pulling the plug on you, and you have a chance to reboot yourself here and do better, or otherwise you're going to just continue down the track you're going, which is going downhill. So that's in a nutshell. That's kind of what's going on. There's other things in his chart, but I see the clock.
No, you can. I mean, if you guys want to stay for a few more minutes, we can. It's interesting. I mean, we can go through a few more things.
Okay. Well,
if you have time.
I do. I have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I didn't know if the window here.
No, they won't shut us off. Don't shut us off. Keep us for a few more minutes.
Well, those are the biggest things. That another thing that's very interesting about this eclipse in Trump's chart is that Mercury in retrograde is going through his first house, which again is his persona. It's how he views things and also how he relates to others. Mercury is in 8 degrees Virgo in retrograde, right, which means that it's his thought process, along with all of us. We're all experiencing this Mercury retrograde to some degree, but that his thoughts about himself and how he sees himself and how he communicates is getting distorted. It's not going well. He's got mixed signals, and he isn't perceiving things clearly. He can't see things really clearly. It's too much inwardly focused. And there's that Mercury at 8 degrees Virgo is making an easy aspect, a sextile, to his natal Mercury in Cancer in his 11th house. So it's because it's an easy aspect, he doesn't really notice it. Everything just flows. So he keeps trying to spin the same kind of stuff that he's been doing, and he doesn't even have the self-awareness. His radar isn't picking up.
He's not objective enough.
He's not objective enough, right. And he's not picking up how badly he's misreading people and misinterpreting or saying things that people do not really like or want to hear. And so this is part of where he's getting in trouble right now, is that Mercury retrograde making this this totally easy aspect to his natal Mercury is like this is
so Mercury is keeping him in the dark.
kind of keeping him in the
It's like,
dark.
just make a fool out of yourself. It's okay.
He can't see it.
He doesn't
can't see
know.
it, and so
Well, that makes sense.
That's one of the things, and then also the planet Uranus, which represents a person's the energy of our individuality and the desire to be our inner rebel, to just be us, despite what anybody else thinks or not. That's been very prominent for him. And during this eclipse, it's making an exact easy aspect to the eclipse. That Uranus, transiting Uranus, is at 28 degrees Aries. It's in his 9th house of
that's foreign affairs.
Foreign affairs.
Yeah. So now he's making a fool out of himself in front of the foreign press and the other leaders, I guess.
So he's again. This is just blindly. He just feels
and he doesn't
like
see it.
He doesn't see it. He just feels he's got carte blanche to do whatever
So in
he wants.
other words, his chart is supportive of him being who he is, saying what he wants, however he wants, and getting and feeling good about it. So he doesn't have the objectivity, whether this is part of his personality or just the way his chart has been set up, or both. He doesn't have the objective awareness to have a filter.
Yeah, good way to put it. Yeah, he can't see it, and he can't filter it, and so he may not be feeling good about everything, but he doesn't feel like it's as bad as people are telling him.
No, because he's only feeling what he feels inside, but when he gets the feedback, he's probably like, well, I'm trying to tell them and they're not listening to me.
So
that makes sense.
And with all this energy in the fire sign like Leo, and the way it shows up in his chart, he's very much self-sustaining and doesn't have a lot of what would you say, a lot of awareness for relating to feedback anyway from people,
right?
Except if he feels like he's able to get an advantage or an edge.
He's not flexible enough to see other sides.
Well, it's not even flexibility. It's the awareness. It's the awareness that he just doesn't read what's going on with people. Because he's so centered in himself.
What is his moon? Is his moon in
His
Sag?
moon is in Sagittarius,
which I found hard to believe. I wonder if there's
but he's a promoter. He's social. He loves meeting with people. He loves being actively engaged, and he's got that in his 4th house, which is opposite his sun. His moon is exactly opposite his sun. He's born at a full moon, and so he loves the dynamism of that, and he's used that in his career. That's been part of his career mode of operation. And the moon represents where we feel good, and so he feels good operating like this. This is why he acts the way he does.
Long.
Yeah, and he's done it for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's the problem here? And unfortunately, there's a bigger structure that he didn't really. I don't think he really assessed well enough when he decided to run for president in the first place, of what the responsibilities of president are. And this is what is so significant about Saturn now coming around and conjuncting his moon and his sun, lined up with his 10th house of career, is that it's really bringing this message home.
Saturn's going to bring things to a head, because Saturn, especially when people have a Saturn return, I don't know how many of you know this, but it gives you what you deserve. Saturn always gives you what you deserve. So if you've worked hard and you've done pretty well, you'll be able to reap those rewards. And if you are on the wrong path, it puts you on the right path. If you haven't done well, it takes away what you believe to be what you need. It will take it away. It will, it will.
And it tries to put you on the right path. It may, we still have our free will, so we may choose to say, no, I'm going to keep going this way anyway. This is just interference. This isn't real. This isn't a real message to me.
Yeah.
And so that's where sometimes when in the sign Leo, when Leo gets magnified, there can be this sense of self-entitlement and aggrandizement and so on. And so Leos it's easy when people have a number of Leo aspects, they can get full of themselves. And he's also been dealing with that. Another thing that's going on in his chart that's very interesting is that Jupiter, the transiting Jupiter has been going through his second house, Jupiter in Libra, and Jupiter's energy is to bring expansion. It brings us opportunities. It brings us expansion. For Trump, it brought him the opportunity of the presidency. And right now, interestingly enough, Jupiter has been making a exact conjunction with his natal Jupiter. It's lining up with his natal Jupiter.
That's a good thing.
And so, in a way, this is empowering him, but it's also maybe distorting his assessment of the situation, that he feels overly optimistic, even though all the data that he's getting is telling him, hey, dude, stop what you're doing. This is not good. But he feels inwardly, this is one more thing that gives him this inner impetus to feel, hey, yeah, I'm good. This is, I'll just keep going.
Well, that would feed right into his Leo rising, because Leo would want to, all that adoration and the feeling of confirmation. So
it's kind of like a setup.
Even bigger.
It would make him even bigger. So he himself feels very optimistic, even though and this is why he doesn't pay attention to the data and to the feedback, is that he feels very optimistic himself about his situation and what he's doing, and just doesn't understand why everybody else doesn't get it. That they should be appreciating him and not criticizing him and not calling him out on all this stuff. So very interesting. But I think the eclipse represents very significant, the way it ties into the country symbolically, going across the country, and the way that it ties into Donald Trump's chart. I would be very surprised if he's still the president by next January or February. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your inside scoop, Richard. And that was really helpful in terms of understanding at least the motivation behind what we're seeing. And also very interesting in terms of symbolically what's happening with the eclipse and how it's going, dividing the country, because that kind of is what's happening. So anyway, it's
and also along that line, that I think that it's not a negative, but it's a sign. It's a symbol that's showing us that this division exists, and it's giving us the opportunity to understand why there is such division in the country, and what's going on in our hearts, because it's going right through the center. What's going on in our hearts, so that we can reset ourselves to actually make America great again, because it's up to the people to a large degree to really take ownership, and that's what we haven't done. We've turned it over to all these political politicians, career politicians, and all these people, that we've just sort of said, well, you know what, I don't want to deal with that stuff, so let's just let them do it. Well, they've gone in and gotten what they need to get for themselves, and we as a people haven't really, number one, owned up to our shadow stuff, and this is why we're seeing all this hatred and prejudice and all of the things that are going on in the news every day, because that's the shadow. And yes, Trump, in his own way, he has allowed this stuff to happen. He has consciously or unconsciously fomented it, because that's part of what I believe his role needed to be, to really shake us up and get us to realize how much discord there is within, disharmony.
It gave everybody a focus, so that scenario could come out in the open. Well, I think we should make a toast to liberty in the sense of equality, and with our kombucha liberty tea. And here, this is our toast to liberty.
And to you.
And to you. Wow, this is really good. It's like watermelon and lime and other wonderful flavors that are diverse, and they come together to make this wonderful flavor. So I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for coming every week that we do this. Richard Simon Kahn. I just think of you as Richard Simon Kahn. I can't forget all
That's
three
good.
parts.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming again. And each time you've been on the show, you've aspected a different part of astrology. They've all been so relevant. Everything from talking about Pluto and Capricorn and America, talking about Donald and Hillary's chart, having the Mercury retrograde show, and now the show on the eclipse and what we can do to watch it and empower us to reap the benefits of it. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Don't forget to send us a like, send us a heart. We love having that. And have a wonderful, wonderful eclipse. Wear your special glasses and do your affirmations. Okay, guys. See you soon. Bye.